Hello students, today we'll do grammar practice. This would work for both the SAT and the ACT. We look at individual questions, individual sentences with mistakes in them, and we'll have some options and we'll try to correct the mistake. So let's begin. Question 1. The earliest English settlers in Virginia failed to survive their first winter in the New World because of factors such as inadequate food supplies, harsh weather, and an inability to communicate with Native Americans. Now, if you look carefully, this question is testing us on parallel structure because structure because we see that the English settlers in Virginia failed to survive due to factors such as inadequate food supplies. That's this is an adjective and this is a noun. Harsh weather, again adjective and noun, and an inability to communicate with Native Americans. So I have a noun, another noun, and so the third element on the list should also be a noun to follow parallel structure, right? So basically parallel structure means that if I have several items in a list, then every item should follow the same grammatical structure. And since inability is a noun, it's the noun form of the verb of the adjective unable, that would be the right answer. So there's no change here. If you look at other options, that they were unable, because they were unable, being unable, lacking in ability, none of them are nouns, right? The only option that is a noun is option A. Question 2. Unlike Mozart, whose funeral was sparsely attended, being buried in an unmarked common grave, Beethoven's was attended by more than 30,000 mourners, and his final resting place lies in a famous Vienna cemetery near the graves of Schubert and Brahms. Now, there are a couple of things I should notice. I start by saying unlike Mozart. So my subject has to be Beethoven's. It can't, this has to be my subject. It can't be Beethoven's funeral because I have to compare Mozart with the subject. I'm not saying unlike Mozart's funeral, Beethoven's funeral was this. I'm saying unlike Mozart, Beethoven was. So any option that has Beethoven's or Beethoven's funeral cannot be correct. So I'll strike out A, I'll strike out B, and I'll strike out D. So I have a Beethoven in option C and option E. Now, if I say unlike Mozart, whose funeral was sparsely attended, and who was buried, not he was buried, right? Because I'm saying unlike Mozart, whose funeral was sparsely attended, and who was buried in an unmarked common grave, Beethoven was given a funeral attended by more than 30,000 mourners and lies buried near the graves of Schubert and Brahms in a famous Vienna cemetery. I know that it reads a little odd because here I have passive voice, he was given, and then I'm changing it to active voice here, right? So it does read a little off, but going from passive to active voice is still preferable than any option that compares Mozart to Beethoven's funeral and not Beethoven, or any option that makes a mistake like and he, as option C does, because I'm saying whose funeral and who was buried, right? The other thing is that being is normally something that we try and avoid on the SAT and ACT. It's not something that we should try and use. So if you see an option with being, that probably will not be the right answer. Okay, that was question 2. Question 3. Based on recent box office receipts, the public's appetite for documentary films, like non-fiction books, seems to be on the rise. Now, my comparison is between, so let's write this. It's a comparison question. My comparison is between the public's appetite for documentary films and non-fiction books. But I can't compare appetite for something with something. I need to compare appetite for something with appetite for something, right? So that means that any option that does not talk about something like interest in non-fiction books will not be correct, right? Because if I'm saying public's appetite for documentary films, I should compare that with its appetite or its interest in non-fiction books. Now, because I'm saying public's appetite, I'll have to compare it with like. So like is what I need. So C is also out. I cannot say as. And now between D and E, I have to choose between the pronoun there and its. And public here is acting as a collective now. I'm talking about people in the collective. And collective nouns take the singular pronoun, and the singular pronoun is its. So my right answer becomes, based on recent box office receipts, the public's appetite for documentary films, like its interest, like the public's interest, public being a collective noun will take the singular pronoun its, like its interest in non-fiction books seems to be on the rise. So my answer is option E. Okay, question 4. More than 30 years ago, Dr. Barbara McClintock, the Nobel Prize winner, reported that genes can jump as pearls moving mysteriously from one necklace to another. So my first problem is that this word as, right? Because I'm comparing jumping genes with moving pearls, right? So I can't say they're not as pearls. As pearls would make it seem that genes are actually pearls. That's not correct, right? So I need to say like pearls moving mysteriously from one necklace to another. So any option with as has to go, right? What about, should I choose between B and D? So when I talk about pearls doing something, that is when I need to say as, because like is used for comparison of nouns and as is used for comparison of actions. For example, he walks as I do, which is to say his walking is similar to my walking. So that's an action. He walks as I do. But he walks like me, right? So here, when I don't say as I do and I say like me, I'm comparing him with me. So he walks like me. So like is used for nouns and as is for actions. So here the right answer would be that like pearls moving mysteriously from one necklace to another. The do will not go with like. So my answer is B. Okay, let's go to question 5. Mathematical analysis of humpback whale sounds provide evidence. Okay, so I can spot my first error here. The subject for this verb is analysis. What provide evidence? Analysis, which is singular. This is singular, so it can't be provide, it has to be provides. So any option with provide can be dismissed. Now, mathematical analysis of humpback whale sounds provides evidence that animals other than humans use a hierarchical structure of communication. So obviously here I'm speaking in the general sense. So I'll use the plural. Animals other than humans use a hierarchical structure. I can also see that this use is not underlined, which means that my verb use is plural. So my noun has to be plural as well, which is what animals other than humans is correct. An animal other than a human distorts the meaning and is also going against the rule of subject-verb agreement. So the right answer is B. Mathematical analysis provides evidence that animals other than humans use a hierarchical structure of communication. Okay, number 6, Hogarth's engravings, which provide a vivid portrait of 18th century London, are of interest to both artists and historians. So the first thing is that my noun is plural, engravings, and so my verb has to be plural also. So I can cancel D and E. And the placement of the word both is the other thing that I have to look at. And because I'm talking about artists and historians, the both has to go before them, right? So Hogarth's engravings are of interest to both artists and historians. Just the way it is written is correct. Option B is just something that doesn't make sense. And this doesn't place, option C doesn't place both correctly. The both has to go with artists and historians. So option A is the right answer. Okay, question 7. With government funding for the arts dwindling, even major orchestras would feel the pressure of trying to meet their payroll and travel costs over the past several years. Now, the thing about this question is that if you're not careful, you will choose a wrong answer because the past several years is what comes towards the end. So, for example, if I don't look at that, I can say with government funding for the arts dwindling, even major orchestras are feeling the pressure. But are feeling the pressure would mean now, currently, not over the past several years. So if I'm talking about over the past several years, I'm speaking about something which has happened. And so the present perfect tense is a good way to write this. So even major orchestras have felt the pressure over the past several years. Will feel, are feeling, and feel, they do not convey the sense correctly because will feel is in the future, are feeling and feel is in the present moment, right? But we need to capture the sense of what has been happening over the past several years. So C is a good answer. Okay, question 8. In the small, closed Bedouin world in which secrets are hard to keep, there is a danger of stigmatizing a carrier and their families. So right off the bat, I see a noun and pronoun disconnect. If I say a carrier, I can't say there because there is plural and carrier is singular. So I can directly say that A will not be correct. Subsequently, lowering their chances for marriage should word get out that a genetic disease runs in her family. Okay, so I need to say stigmatizing a carrier and her family. Yeah, so it looks correct here. Okay, then I also see difference between in which and which. So I need to obviously say in which, because I'm saying in the small closed Bedouin world, in which secrets are hard to keep, not which secrets. So I can eliminate C and I can eliminate E. So now I have two things to look for in which I have already narrowed down to B and D, and I need to look at the correct pronoun usage for carrier, stigmatizing a carrier and her family, not families, subsequently lowering. So the right answer is B. Okay. So that was question 8. Let's go to question 9. The general led a feared army that idolized him. They all mourned his ironic death from friendly fire. Okay. So I have, so the first thing I can directly eliminate E, right? Because that has a comma between two independent sentences, and that is not allowed because this would lead to a comma splice. So E is out. Now, the other thing I have to understand is army is a collective noun. So I'm going to use the singular pronoun for it again. So I'm going to eliminate A and B also. I need to say it. And this second pronoun refers to the general. So obviously it's the general singular. So it would have to be his. So that means the general led a feared army that idolized him, semicolon. It mourned his ironic death from friendly fire. Okay, so that was question 9. Let's go to question 10. Although covered in about 11 inches of snow, aviation officials said the conditions on the runway at the time of the emergency landing was acceptable. Okay, so this is what is called a modifier error. Why? Because when I say although covered in about 11 inches of snow, I'm referring to the runway, right? And so the part after the comma should start with the runway. If I start with aviation officials, it will make it seem that they were covered in 11 inches of snow, and that makes no sense, right? So any option that does not have the runway as the subject will be eliminated. So A is out. The runway conditions, not the conditions, the runway. So B is out. This is out. This is fine. And this is out. So actually, just on the basis of the modifier, we understood that we had to start the sentence with runway. The runway was in acceptable condition during the emergency landing, according to aviation officials. There was another problem with the sentence as it was written. If we are saying the conditions on the runway, then this subverb has to go with conditions, which is plural. So it can't be was. The conditions were acceptable. So when you have a long sentence, always try to isolate the correct subject for the verb to figure out if the verb should be singular or plural. But in this case, that wasn't required because there was only one correct answer based on the modifier. Okay, let's go to question 11. Discouraged by new data that show increases in toxic emissions from domestic factories, searches for alternative investment. So this is another modifier question. Who is discouraged? Is it the nation's leading manufacturing companies? Is it shareholders of the nation's leading manufacturing companies? We'll see, but it definitely can't be A or B because the searches were not discouraged, right? The search is an action. So discouraged by new data that show increases in toxic emissions from domestic factories, shareholders of the nation's leading manufacturing companies had begun searching. I don't like this had begun because that is the past perfect tense and that doesn't make sense unless you have another action in the sentence with respect to which there is the past perfect. So so this is also out. So I have are searching and are searching. Okay, now we have to decide. Shareholders of the nation's leading manufacturing companies are searching for alternative investment opportunities. And D is saying the nation's leading manufacturing companies are searching for alternative opportunities for its shareholders. Okay, so actually this D is already out because this is a pronoun error. If I'm saying the nation's leading manufacturing companies, then it has to be their shareholders because companies is plural, so their shareholders. But if that was not the case, let's say that D said there, then would we be able to choose between D and E? I would say that E is kind of more concise. It's still a better answer because if I say shareholders are searching for alternative investment opportunities, that's a little better, that's more precise, more concise than saying the nation's leading manufacturing companies are searching for alternative investment opportunities for their shareholders. So while grammatically D and E would both be correct if there was a there in D, I would still think E is more precise, right? So here, obviously, E is undoubtedly the right answer because D has a grammatical error. Okay, let's go to question 12. Hailed as a key discovery in the science of evolution, the fossils of a large scaly creature resembling both a fish and a land animal provide evidence of. Okay, so what was hailed as a key discovery? It was obviously the fossils. So the fossils is fine. The large scaly creature was not discovered, right? It was the fossils that were discovered. So this is a modifier error, and this is also a modifier error. Okay, and so B and C are out. Now, if I look at the fossils, 1 second, I'll just Yeah. So the fossils of a large scaly creature which resembles both a fish and, so this is option D, this provides is wrong because fossils is the subject, so it has to be provide. Right, so D is also out. The fossils of a large scaly creature resemble both. Okay, so this kind, E doesn't kind of denote the meaning correctly because I'm saying, yeah, so 1A is more concise because I'm saying the fossils of a large scaly creature resembling both a fish and a hand animal provide evidence for, so that's more concise. And B, in E, it makes it sound that the fossils resemble the fish, while I need to say that the creature resembles the fish, right? And A says that the creature resembling both. So A indicates that the creature resembles the fish, while E makes it sound that the fossils resemble, and that can't make sense. So the answer is option A. Okay, so that was a quick grammar practice. This was some questions where we looked at subject verb agreement, we looked at modifier, we looked at a little bit of punctuation with the case, comma and the semicolon, right? If you found this useful, let me know in the comments and I'll upload more videos with this kind of practice. These are definitely advanced questions because you kind of have to look at a number of factors. We also looked at comparison questions here. So please hit like and subscribe to the channel if this is useful. I'll see you guys in a similar video soon. Take care. Bye-bye.